Hello, friends. Welcome to the Wellness Inspired Podcast, the place where you can find inspiration, motivation, and empowerment in the pursuit of a wellness lifestyle. I'm your host, Sherry Davidson, and my terrier mix rescue dog and co-host Finn is here with us. And today we have an exciting episode for you. I sat down with Kathleen Hanley, a great friend and a fellow runner. She is actually getting ready for a big race in October. It is Moab 240. And yes, that is 240 miles. And I could not be more excited for her to take on this challenge. Obviously, she loves running and she is involved in the local road and trail running community in Houston, Texas. Currently, she is a trail racing over Texas. We call it TROT. That stands for Trail Racing Over Texas, and she is an ambassador, and she hopes to encourage others to join the Texas trail community. So if you are interested in getting out on the trails, you can always contact her, or you can go to the TROT website. Kathleen is not only a runner, but she is also a doctor of public health. She graduated from the University of Texas Health Science Center School of Public Health in 2020 and is a certified health education specialist. Her earlier education was at the University of Florida, where she's from, and she obtained a BS and MS in health education. And while she lived in Florida, she worked at county health departments where she gained experience as a community health educator in the departments of epidemiology and disease surveillance and community health. Kathleen and I are both passionate about keeping people healthy. So in this episode, we talk about the effects of sedentary lifestyle on health, specifically in the workplace. Unfortunately, more and more of our jobs are sedentary, and there are some serious health consequences. This is also the topic of Kathleen's dissertation. In this episode, she shares her research and findings with us. Now, I don't want to give too much away. What stood out to me the most was that prolonged sitting, that sitting between 8 and 11 hours without interruptions, is harmful to our health. It can lead to premature mortality, cardiovascular disease, and increased cancer incidence. But here's what I find interesting and important. She found it is most beneficial to interrupt prolonged sitting throughout the day, even if you're active. So this means that if you're active in the morning, you go to the gym in the morning or after work, you're not getting the same benefits as interrupting prolonged sitting throughout the day to improve physical and mental health. So if you have a job that requires a lot of sitting, you don't want to miss this episode. But before we move on, I have a few things I'd like to mention. National Dog Day is August the 26th. And in celebration, Finn and I will do an episode on the healing power of dogs. This was Finn's idea, so you can thank him for this episode. It is a topic we have experienced, and it is also an experience that has positively shifted our lives. So join us in a couple of weeks. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I am about to go on a wellness trip. I'm going on a running adventure in the Faroe Islands. It is an archipelago of islands in between Iceland and Norway. So I'm super excited. I've been planning this trip since 2019, and it is finally here. But my plan is to do an episode while I'm there, but we'll see how it goes and how that plays out. There, back here, I will share my story and my experience, and hopefully it will be a great one and one that is well worth the wait. Okay. Are you guys ready to do this? All right, let's go. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Sherry.
Welcome back to the podcast. We did the Durango Skyline Trail Race episode together. We did the race together along with Jason, and we did a podcast episode on that, and I think it went really well.
It did. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was super fun. And you're training for Moab 240. How's training going?
Training is going really well. I'm feeling stronger every day. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you're doing it in October. It's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm super excited for you. Not only are you a runner, but you're also a doctor of public health. And like me, you are passionate about keeping people healthy. And, I started this podcast to inspire, empower, and motivate people in living a wellness lifestyle or healthier lifestyle. And one of the big topics that I talk about is exercise and movement. I know we talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, on the episode that we did together. And exercise and movement is one of the best things that you can do for your health. And in modern times, we spend at least a third of our lives working in an office behind a computer. That does not support us in our health and wellness at all. So we're living longer, which is great, but we're living with more chronic diseases. The CDC says that 6 in 10 people live with one chronic disease, and 4 out of every 10 live with more than one. And most of them are lifestyle related. When you live with one or more chronic diseases, your quality of life goes down, and it's a huge economic cost. So you did your dissertation on sedentary behavior in the workplace and what would make somebody stick to an activity program. And I want to hear all about your findings and your research. But first, tell people a little bit about you and why you pursued a career in public health, what you're currently doing, where you're working, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah. Well, I have a background in health education. I actually got my Bachelor of Science and Master's in health education. And so I first started off working in the field of health education. In Miami, I worked at the health department in disease surveillance.
That's right, because you're from Florida.
Yeah, and epidemiology. So that was really interesting. It was a different aspect of public health. We actually would track diseases such as like flu in schools and things like that to see if it was on the rise. And then a couple years after that, I moved to Sarasota, and I worked in the Manatee County Health Department. And I
love manatees.
I actually have seen manatees in Florida and got to kayak with them.
I think they used to be one of my spiritual animals. I love them.
They are pretty neat. Yeah, I enjoy seeing them. We actually saw some babies on the last kayaking trip we took.
Really?
Yeah, it was really sweet. But anyway, back to Manatee County Health Department. I did some community, I was a community health specialist there. So I did community education. I'd go to health fairs. We did a community health needs assessment, going like door to door and seeing the needs of the community. It was really interesting experience. But working there, I realized that I felt like I didn't have enough research skills to help me, I don't even want to say move up into like a director position, but just to make good health decisions, like to lead the community. I felt like I needed to learn more of those research skills. So I started looking at doctoral programs at different schools, and I applied to different schools, and I got into University of Texas Health Science Center. And I came to Texas, and I did a tour, and I loved it. And I asked if I could kayak in Texas, and somebody there told me I could kayak in the bayous, and I didn't know.
You believed them.
Yes, I believed them.
And
you can, but it's not the same as Florida. But I came here anyway. Yeah. So I came here, and the program I did was amazing. In my master's, I learned a lot about behavior change theory, and so I felt pretty confident on that. But the research skills I learned, the data analysis skills I learned, in addition to the research design skills, were just amazing. So I'm really glad I joined that program.
Yeah. So what was your favorite part of Texas or Houston? Besides kayaking on the bayou.
I think it was just knowing I would be supported by a lot of the faculty. That even though we had some differences in research interests, my advisor's interests were very close to mine. And Wendell Taylor, does a lot of research in the physical activity and sedentary behavior fields. But I was offered like a graduate assistant TA position. And so I was a teaching assistant. And so like they welcomed me, they let me be part of the department. And I just felt, really like the place was becoming home. So I think just the support of the faculty there really made me want to be part of it.
People are pretty great here.
Yeah, we called ourselves the greatest cohort ever. So that was like our little hashtag for our cohort of 2016.
That's a great name. It's a
Yeah.
great hashtag.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, let's jump into your research because you did your dissertation on sedentary lifestyle, sedentary behavior. And you also did some research and you have some findings on mainly the workplace. So tell us what is sedentary behavior?
Yeah. So I became really interested in sedentary behavior and physical activity because I'd attend all these conferences and we're just sitting all day. And it was just kind of weird that we were so interested in public health and making a difference in health, but then we weren't being active. And I knew there was something there because I know being active makes me feel better. I know there's benefits to that, but what are the harms of sedentary behavior? And that wasn't really studied as much as physical activity. So I wanted to learn more. And so I learned that sedentary behavior, it's defined as any waking behavior that's less than or equal to 1.5 metabolic equivalents. And that's usually if you're lying down or sitting. So when we think about sedentary behavior, we'll think about things like laying down, watching a movie, or playing a video game, or reading a book.
What about work?
Work is a great one, yes.
Is that sedentary, like sitting at a desk?
Yeah, sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
Now, there are ways to break that up, and that's something we did look at. But sitting all day at work is a big one. And when we think about it, Americans on average, according to the Department of Human Services, they found that Americans spend 7.7 hours a day in sedentary behavior as of 2018. Wow. So we know that since COVID, a lot of people are working from home. And so that's probably shifted and increased. I know there's some reports out there that say we are sitting more, moving less, because even though we might have more opportunity to be active, people are actually working more. So
people are working more. And I also think that when you have to get up, get ready, get into your car, prepare for the day, drive to work, get out, walk to work, you're still getting some of that activity in. Whereas when you're at home working, you get up, make coffee, and you might sit on your sofa, or you might sit at a dining room table or a desk, in your office, and you're not really getting that movement in just to go to work, right? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think we didn't really consider that movement, but now that it's gone, it was so much movement, so many more steps than when I just walked to my office in my house, and I don't get very many steps in unless I take a break. So like Sherry said, we are also moving to occupations that are becoming more sedentary. So a lot of jobs used to require more physical activity, but there's more and more jobs out there that aren't requiring that movement. So that's also an issue. And I wanted to address this as well. People, I don't want you to think like, oh, well, I'm working and I shouldn't work and I'll be more active if I quit my job. There's actually research that says people who are full-time employees actually engage in more physical activity. So maybe that's for a variety of factors, but let's think about, as an employee, if you are sitting all day, let's think about the ways that maybe we can incorporate more movement in your day while you're still working. And some research has found that people spend 11 hours a day sedentary. So that's a lot. So maybe more than just your 8 hours. And I think for myself, if I'm working 8 hours, maybe I also have lunch at my desk. So maybe that's 9. Maybe I watch TV with my husband a couple hours, and that's easily 11. So it's important to think about how often we're sitting. Yeah. And most important to think about the prolonged sitting. So the sitting without a break. So one of the things I want to get into is the solutions. But before I do, I wanted to bring up what the health consequences of sedentary behavior are. So research has shown that there's a lot of risks related to prolonged sedentary behavior. So we're not just talking about sitting in an hour, sitting for long periods of time throughout the day. And high amounts of sedentary behavior, regardless of your physical activity level, so regardless of whether you run an hour before work, can have some negative or increase your risk for some of these consequences, which include all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease related mortality, type 2 diabetes, And it's also associated with some cancers. So I'm not saying it's causing these cancers, but it's associated with endometrial cancer, colon cancer, and lung cancer.
Interesting. Lung. I was about to say all the things that are kind of around.
I was thinking you would get that. And this is according to the Physical Activity Guidelines Advisory Committee of 2018. They do, it's a bunch of experts that come together and do systematic reviews of the literature. So they have a huge guide, and I can send you the link for that because there's a lot of information in there.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Sure. That sounds great. So when I think about this, I think, okay, I run an hour before work and then I sit for 8 hours, maybe 11 hours. There's a lot of harms with that. So what can I do? What can other people do? And so that's what I was really interested in.
Well, I find that very interesting that even if you run for an hour, because most people will work out before or after work, right? But you're saying that it's the prolonged, the 8 hours of sitting that needs to be broken up, because it doesn't matter what you do outside of that, you still have some, it still can cause some negative
health consequences, or increase your risk for them anyway. Yeah. So there are some benefits to interrupting sedentary time, and that Physical Activity Guidelines Committee I told you about, they found that in the past, they said, well, 10 minutes of physical activity is good, right? Well, now they're starting to look at it and say even short amounts of physical activity, just a couple minutes here and there, when they're added up, they can have those same physical activity benefits. So we don't need to knock somebody who's like just taking the stairs for 2 minutes to add some activity to their day. That's actually really beneficial. And that's adding up as much as whether you do it in one time. And it may actually be more beneficial. So that's what research is starting to look at. The other thing I wanted to mention is when we talk about sedentary behavior and like sitting down and reading a book, there could be other benefits to that. So I don't want to think like all sedentary time is bad. Yeah. There's maybe emotional and cognitive benefits of that. So I don't like to look at it as black and white, but I do want to think about when I sit for a really long time, that may not be the best for me, and breaking it up may be beneficial. So how can I do that?
Yeah.
So
some downtime's good.
Yeah, downtime is great. I love to read.
Yeah,
sometimes too much about running, but I do I do love to read.
I do too.
So I just wanted to share some of the benefits that I reported on in my dissertation on those shorter amounts of physical activity. And so according to that committee I've been talking about, short bouts of physical activity in less than 10 minutes still were found to be associated with lower BMI, lower blood pressure, lower LDL, higher HDL, improved glycemic control, reduced inflammatory markers, and a lower cardiovascular disease risk. The other thing is short amounts of physical activity can also help with anxiety and improve sleep, executive function, and even still reduce blood pressure and insulin sensitivity. So maybe you take a 2-minute break and you come back and you feel a little bit refreshed. You feel less anxious about some email you were going to send or some conversation you were going to have with a coworker. So there could be some more benefits just other than just the physical.
I think focus would be a good one, because I know, like, for me, when I work from home and I'm working on the podcast, I'll plan out my day, right? And I'll say, okay, from 8 to 10, I'm going to work on my newsletter for the clinic. And then I'm going to take a break and I'm going to take Finn for a walk. And I'm going to work for another hour on this. And then I'm going to eat something. I always know when it's time for me to take a break when I start losing my focus, because once I do that, I come back and I'm there. I'm fixed on it, right? So I can imagine that being really, really good too.
That is, and some research on physical activity breaks has found benefits of having like little alerts, kind of like what you're doing for yourself to get up and move. And I know some of our watches do that too. But that can also be, that can also be helpful to just remind you to take a break. And so I wanted to start talking about some theories I looked into on behavior change and the social ecological aspects of changing behavior. Maybe there are things you can use with your patients or that you do use. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about how a theory I use to look at physical activity participation in the work site. So one of the theories I thought was interesting that has looked at physical activity engagement So I don't want to say sedentary behavior. More research needs to be done with some of these things. But if we're looking at physical activity, we could also maybe look at sedentary behavior because it's almost the opposite, right? Like you can't be sedentary and physically active at the same exact moment. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but trans-theoretical model, it's also called TTM. You probably will understand the concepts pretty easily, but there are 6 different stages. The first begins with pre-contemplation. So that's before you're thinking about making a change. You don't intend to change in the next 6 months. Then there's contemplation. That's when you're considering changing in 6 months. I knew you knew this.
Yeah, I just didn't know the name of it.
Preparation, planning a change in the month or week, and then action and maintenance. And then we have termination, which termination I think is a little difficult to assess whether something's really terminated. And I think a lot of people that work one-on-one with patients may get them when they're at the contemplation or try to move them from pre-contemplation to contemplation to preparing. And so I can see a lot of work there. And some worksite interventions can tailor their messages to people in different groups to see, these people are thinking about it. What can we do to move them to preparing? Or these people are preparing. What tools can we give them to move them to action? So that theory is really interesting.
And is that something workplaces are applying?
Some studies have looked at physical activity using the trans-theoretical model, and some work sites may be applying it without even knowing. I think a lot of this behavior change, these theories we look at, sometimes you'll look at a great work site program and you see, wow, they've applied some of these concepts without even knowing it.
Interesting.
And then I just briefly wanted to talk about ecological models that consider the environment, because when we look at physical activity or sedentary behavior, just like you said, work, sitting at home, if you're working from home and you're sitting all day, or in an office and sitting all day, that's the environment. And sometimes that's hard to change, but work sites could have the opportunity to allow their employees either flexible schedules to take classes when they want, or they could add a gym or, pay for membership. So there's different things that you can do to change that environment. So
have you ever heard of nudge design?
No, but I feel like I know what nudge means.
You know what it means? Yeah. It's nudging people through the design of an environment to make healthier, positive change.
Okay.
So, take, for example, a city. They might make the roads more narrow, and they might put more stoplights or stop signs. So it's easier to walk than it is to drive. So they might make the sidewalks bigger and make it easier to walk than to drive, because people are like, oh my God, all the lights and all the stop signs. I'd rather walk down the block instead of drive my car down the block, right? In the workplace, they might do things like in the kitchen, they might put all the water up in the front and the sodas in the back, So it's just, nudging people to make a positive behavior change through the design of an environment.
Yeah, I think we definitely look at that in different theories that involve the environment. We may not call it nudge, or maybe some people do. But I know a lot of people in my program who were definitely interested in the environmental side of things.
Yeah. Environment is a pillar of health, and what you surround yourself with, not just in your home life, but your work life. And if you're in a very sedentary environment and it doesn't promote that, then you're probably going to fall into that, especially when you're busy and you're trying to work and get through your day. You're not really thinking about those things. It needs to be easy and things that you don't have to think about, right?
Yeah. I know some people will also say, if I go home, I won't go on that walk after work. So they modify their schedule, bring the gym bag with them and go right after. So things like that too.
Your life is in your hands, but what happens when you lose control? Those bad habits start to creep in and your mind becomes restless. Well, it's time to get back in the driving seat and be the master of your own destiny. At Element 5 Acupuncture and Wellness, we are here with you every step of the way. Our wellness coaching helps you make sustainable changes that will transform your life. Whether that's losing weight, improving sleep, or coping with stress, you'll be part of a client-centered partnership that will help you reach your goals. All the healing, support, guidance, and encouragement you could ever need. So what are you waiting for? Get motivated and thrive with Element 5 Acupuncture and Wellness.
So there was something I found when I was reading my fancy sedentary behavior and health book that I absolutely love. And I'm not as familiar with operant theories specifically, but I was looking at them because it was in the book, and I thought of some things that you mentioned the other day when we were out running or hiking together. So a couple of concepts they talked about were positive reinforcement, and sedentary behavior is positively reinforced. Sometimes reading a book, that's a great thing, right? So there's a positive reinforcement, as well as we don't need to know how to do it. We know how to sit down versus a physical activity could be really hard to learn. It could be intimidating. So sedentary behavior is really easily positively reinforced. Another thing I found that I'm going to get to the thing we talked about, but was when something's extinguished. So I think this goes more about, say you play soccer as a kid. As you get older, you lose the friends you played soccer with. You don't have that opportunity. You can't find a team. And then that behavior you have becomes extinguished. And so that can be a problem with physical activity and people turning more sedentary. Another thing the book talked about is maybe you go watch games instead of actually participate in the sport as you get older. It's just a normal thing as you progress. And so I thought that was really interesting how something could go extinct. I know when I was a kid, I did gymnastics. I don't do gymnastics now, but I found running, thankfully. But there's not as much maybe opportunity for that as you age, or it's harder to find. Because I do know people who do like intramural sports together and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I briefly talked about this, but what negative reinforcement. So sometimes you may join, for example, a Zumba class like I did, and you embarrass the heck out of yourself, and so you don't want to go back.
And I have a comment on that when you're done.
And so that can make a behavior like physical activity hard, and it can really increase the sedentary behavior because you're not going to uptake that after that embarrassing experience.
So I learned a new term. I was doing some coaching CEUs, and habinula. Have you ever heard of the habinula?
I think so.
It's the brain's kill switch.
Yes.
So this was new to me, that we have a kill switch. And just what you were talking about, if you have a bad experience with something, that we have a memory of that, or if you have repeated failures, right? And so let's say you're dieting and you constantly fail at dieting, then your habinula, if say you go see a coach and you're like, hey, I really want to lose weight, and the coach starts talking about diets, all of a sudden everything just shuts down, right? It's your habinula.
That's so interesting.
Yes, and they were talking about a difference between performative coaching and a learning mindset. So performative mindset versus learning mindset. So you have the performative mindset, which is you have your SMART goals, right? It's a lot more, but everybody knows what SMART goals are. And that's performative based, and only 20% of the people respond to that.
Wow.
The other 80% respond to the learning mindset, which means you don't fail at it, right? Like, so if you do a diet and you see that it's not working for you, that's all it is. It's just information, right? So how can we tweak this? And it's more of an iterative action. So you do it differently, just a little bit differently. Like maybe if you wanted to fast, maybe eating in the window of between 11 and 6 is not working for you, right? So maybe you switch that a little bit. So you're always learning something from your experience. So there is no failure in that. And so it decreases the likelihood that the habinula will take over and shut down. I don't know. I find that very interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Now I just love saying the word habinula. I think I'm saying that right. Habinula.
I hope you are, because you said it like 10 times now.
So anyways, that was in response to, people having a bad experience of something.
Yeah, that's interesting. It reminds me of a conversation today in Toastmasters. Somebody was describing growth as like a garden and how we grow at different rates, but also that we can see growth by how we're talking. And we adapt and we're constantly growing. Maybe, you know, today I have one conversation with you. Tomorrow you may see how I've grown just by the words I use. And I thought that was so interesting because that adaptability and growth when it's allowed or.
Yeah. I love it. It's awesome. Yeah. What do they say? You never step in the same river twice. Isn't that who said that?
I don't know.
I think it was an Eastern philosopher.
Yeah.
I just don't remember who. I'll have to look it up.
When I go out on the trails, I never feel like I step on the same trail twice. It's always so
always
different. Yep, even the leaves and whatever sticks are on the ground. So,
but that bridge is always the same. What is it? What bridge? It's the bridge over into the heights. What bridge is that? What do we call it?
I'm blanking.
It's heights. I can't remember the name of the bridge, but anyways, that bridge is always the same.
You're not talking about TC Jester, though.
Oh, TC Jester Bridge. Yes.
Okay.
We call it something else, though.
I don't know. You may need to phone a bad news bears.
Yes, our running group is called the Bad News Bears because we're always late. We walk. Okay, so back on topic.
Did you have something for me? I wanted to get into my research on self-determination theory because I haven't even touched on the theory that I looked at.
Oh,
so is
cool.
that okay?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so
of course.
I used self-determination theory, and what it does is it looks at motivation for a behavior. And it says that people, according to self-determination theory, motivation to perform a behavior is determined by autonomous forms of motivation and the basic psychological needs. The basic psychological needs are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And so when we look at autonomous forms of motivation, if you're intrinsically motivated, that's from within, and then outside of you, external forces is extrinsic motivation. And then I'm not really going to talk about a motivation, but that's just kind of like on the other side of it. And so when we're intrinsically or maybe have some extrinsic motivation, we'll be more likely to perform a behavior. But if you're intrinsically motivated, you're way more likely.
That's what coaching is all about, finding is that motivation from within.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we think about autonomy, it's that control that a person has, and the environment can affect how much control you feel like you have over your life. And then competence is, how competent you are. I like to think of self-efficacy or confidence in doing something. And then relatedness is like the connection and the support you get around it as well, and how much you can relate and share that with others. And so competence and intrinsic motivation were found to positively predict physical activity participation among various settings and populations. So what that means is those two things, that psychological need of competence and that intrinsic motivation, positively predicted physical activity among different settings and different populations. So we know those two components are probably pretty important for physical activity. And then when we look at intrinsic motivation, we found that it predicts long-term physical activity adherence. Not a lot of studies look at adherence to interventions. They look at outcomes, but not really adherence. And so that's one thing I was interested in. So I was looking at research that supported self-determination theory and adherence to a physical activity program. And it makes sense if you're intrinsically motivated, you'd be more likely to adhere. Yeah. And then based on self-determination theory, those with positive prior physical activity experiences were more likely to enroll in a program. So we have adherence, we have enrollment. Yep, exactly. And then those with greater self-efficacy related to that competence you're talking about and the enjoyment, intrinsic, motivation, that inner enjoyment, and then perceived benefits, which could also affect autonomous motivation, were more likely to adhere. So a lot of those self-determination theories showed people were more likely to stick with a physical activity intervention. And then furthermore, we found out that previous research showed autonomous motivation is influenced by convenience of physical activity, which could be offering a class during work hours. And so one of the interventions I looked at was the booster break intervention. And I wanted to see people that adhered to the intervention, what were things that made them stick with it. Now, adherence was measured not in the most ideal manner form of my dissertation, but we looked at whether they started the initial baseline assessment and then the 6-month follow-up. So were they still in the study from the beginning to the end? Do we know all the data in between? Not exactly. So there is some, some lack there. My study population was kind of small. I was using data from the booster break study. And so my population...
What is the booster break study?
So I'm so sorry. It's a 15-minute break at the work site. Okay. It was a peer-led program for 15 minutes, but it did it included like a little warm-up and a cool down. So it wasn't too lengthy, but it was offered at the work site.
Got it.
And so that 15-minute break is what I looked at. Those who participated at baseline and 6 months, did they stick with it? And when they did baseline and post-test assessments, there were various screeners that were done to collect information on their enjoyment and like some of these constructs like social support. And so I looked at the ones related to self-determination theory, and my sample size was too small for a statistically significant result, but I still looked at some of the differences and trends. So I looked at descriptive statistics and found that participants with lower baseline physical activity were more likely to adhere to the intervention. What that might mean is because this was a short amount of time at work, 15 minutes with including a cool down, relaxation cool down. Maybe for those with less physical activity in the beginning, this was something that appealed to them. It wasn't going running for an hour. Right. It was a smaller thing. It was at work. It was convenient. So touching on all those factors. Another thing that I found was that people with greater perceived enjoyment for physical activity, self-efficacy, so that competence, confidence, for moderate intensity physical activity, so not vigorous, but moderate intensity. And those with social support for physical activity were more likely to adhere to the booster break program. And so what that may show is that people who stick with it, they have some enjoyment. They see the benefit. They have some self-efficacy, and they have social support, people supporting them. So when we go forward and want to create an intervention, and lots of physical activity interventions have seen that social support is an important construct. And I think we know as runners that getting out there probably would not happen if we didn't have our friends supporting us. That social support doesn't always have to be the one you're active with. It could be other family members that support you too. But it wasn't a surprise to me that social support
not a surprise
was important. So what I thought after my study was that future workplace interventions may want to address perceived self-efficacy, so competence. And so this intervention had somebody who was a peer leader leading it. And so if we can have somebody that's kind of guiding you, I kind of think of Grady leading me into trail running. I had that peer leader, that supporter who got me into it. I probably would have been too scared to go trail running on my own, to be honest. And then perceived enjoyment, I think that is a little bit harder to get at. Like, how do you get people to enjoy physical activity, especially in a work site, because everyone is so different. And that's what I think, like, you as a coach, when you're addressing people, finding, like, directing them to something they like. Go back to when you were a kid. What did you enjoy? Because it's going to be really hard to find that intrinsic motivation if you don't have enjoyment, right? So those, so that was some of the stuff I found, and I just wanted to share a little bit about that. I love looking at different theories that tell us about behavior, but most importantly, while we're still doing research on sedentary behavior, and we don't know what the ideal amount is, I think it's important to at least think about how we can break it up in our day if we do have the ability to, So
I think that for me is the biggest takeaway, is breaking it all up, right? Get up, go to the bathroom, get up, walk. I know when I used to work in corporate design, I had to walk a long ways just to go to the bathroom, right? Like, get up and go to the kitchen. We had a kitchen, take the stairs. There's always those little small things that you can do throughout your day. Or get up if you have an office, shut the door and do some jumping jacks. I don't know. Because not only that, it wakes you up. So I think those are great findings. And I know when I work with somebody coaching, one of the first things we do is talk about values and what's important to them. And, if they have to move, what can they do that they will enjoy? Whether it might be riding bikes with your kids, or going for a walk in the park with a loved one, it can be gardening, it can be all kinds of things, but enjoyment is very important. I always talk about it a lot, running, because I get so much out of it, just the community of people. I do it and I travel, so I love traveling and running because I get to explore different places. It's a great way to see a place. So you just have to kind of do a little self-discovery and cultivate a little awareness around it and go do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think as a kid, I didn't run, but now I enjoy running. But I always enjoyed being outside. I just even sit in the sun. We used to walk home from school, and I enjoyed that. And I think that comes now. I can see how much I enjoyed being outside because I still enjoy it. But I don't want to discourage people by making them think, you have to run or you have to do a sport, because just like you said, spending every day outside doing something different, whether that's gardening or taking care of your dog, walking your dog, or even grocery shopping, those little amounts of things we do that are physical activities shouldn't be discounted.
Exactly.
And to be able to move and do a little bit of that every day is really important. And so when people do make changes like that, even if it's parking farther down the parking lot, or it's going to walk around the grocery store a few more times just because you want to get some more movement, or clean the house just because you want to be active a little, that counts. That counts. So I don't want to discount the choice that people make in their physical activity. It's all important. It's all good for us.
Well, I think last time when we did the podcast, we talked about saying movement instead of
you're right.
Exercise.
Yeah,
I still say exercise and movement when I talk, because I do think exercise is intimidating for a lot of people, and it also seems like a lot of work, right? When you say, "Oh, I'm going to go exercise," it doesn't sound like fun. It just sounds like I'm going to go do something because I know I have to do it, right? I'm going to go exercise. But if you say movement, it's a little bit more attractive to people, I think. So, well, this has been great. One more question before we wrap it up.
Okay.
So what's your future? Where do you want to go with all of this? What would be your ideal position or your ideal, I don't know if I want to say job, but what your ideal where do you want to take it all?
I don't know entirely. I think when I worked at the health department, I thought I wanted to be a director of something one day, and I'm going to have the research skills to do it after I get my doctorate. And now dealing with more project management, I do enjoy that. I think it's hard to be away from seeing the direct effects of your work with patients. I do a lot on the computer, and I'm not directly involved with patients anymore, or rather community members. I used to be more involved with community members. And I think there's different opportunities to do that, whether it's volunteering. I became a Trot ambassador for one of those reasons. Right. I wanted to connect with my community. Yeah. And so going forward, I don't really know. I think since COVID, anything is
I just
possible.
Want to tell people you're Trot ambassador.
Oh, yeah.
Which means it's trail racing over Texas. She's an ambassador. Yeah.
I'm an ambassador for Trot this year, so I really just want to get more people involved in the trail running community, and that even includes hiking, because a lot of the races are flexible with time, so you can walk them. And I just want to share what I love with others. So I'm hoping that somebody comes up to me and says that they did a race because I encouraged them. But I'm here to just support new runners, new hikers, new trail runners. And so I'm really enjoying doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, this has been wonderful. Such great information. And thank you.
Thank you for having me, Sherry.
You'll have to come back again.
Yeah, hopefully it wasn't too researchy, and I'll share whatever resources for whoever's interested.
Yeah, you can share resources. I'll put them all in the show notes, so if people want to dive in, they can do that. And do you want people to contact you in any way?
They can follow me on Instagram, Ultra Kathy. And and this was really fun because I haven't been in the world of sedentary behavior for a while, just with my work now. And so it was fun to get back into it. And so maybe that's another avenue to go into, some more research related to this would be fantastic.
Well, I think it's a great topic, and I think it's much needed. And so you'll have to come back. Maybe we can do more stuff on it. And
that would be so fun.
You can explore that a little bit more here.
That would be great.
Well, cool. Well, thank you. And until next time.
Okay. Thanks, Sherry.
Bye.
Bye.
What did you guys think? I loved hearing about Kathleen's research and findings. It is such an important topic because more and more people are sitting behind a computer working for longer hours. And if we don't bring attention to it and take action, we are setting ourselves up for harmful consequences. So the message of this episode, get up and move throughout your day. You won't regret it. All right. Well, that's another wrap. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast and share with your family and friends. You can also give me a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps others find me as well. And as always, I would love to hear your feedback. I'm dedicated to bringing you great content that is inspiring, informative, with an artsy, fun, edgy spin. So thank you so much for listening. We'll meet here again next time, and never stop exploring, learning, loving, and being you. Bye.